Hi everyone. I wanted to talk to you about this journal, this notebook that I'm writing about Tudor history in, specifically pre-Tudor history, the Wars of the Roses, because I'm sort of setting it up, not setting it up, just using it like a bullet journal. So I wanted to talk to you about the contents of the notebook, the journal, and also the idea of using the bullet journal system for a non-planner. So basically for like a notebook or a journal. I've got Daisy here and I've got Jasper there. Hi Daisy, hi sweetie pie. And I've got Ruby there being a very good girl and not climbing the Christmas tree. But if she starts climbing the Christmas tree, I'm going to have to shout at her because I can't edit these videos, and so I can't easily pause it to get her down. So, this is a Moleskine sized notebook, so it's not quite as wide as an A5 notebook. I can't remember what company it is. Let's see if it says it in the back. No, doesn't say anything on it. There was a band around it when I bought it, but I bought it from TK Maxx for £2. It was in the clearance section, and it is a good notebook, but the binding is a bit rubbish. The paper is a lot better than Moleskine. It's quite a soft cover. I'm not particularly fond of these soft, sort of rubbery feeling covers. The binding isn't holding up very well. As you can see, it's sticking out, but I will repair that if it does fail anymore. But it's got a ribbon and a back pocket, and the paper is really good quality compared to a Moleskine. I'm using my fountain pens in it and it's not bleeding through unless I really put some ink down on the page. So let me show you my notebook and then I'll talk about it in the context of bullet journal system. So this notebook is about currently about the Wars of the Roses, which, if you don't know, was a period of basically civil war in England before the period of Henry VIII. You had the York royals, and then you've got the Lancaster side of nobility or the royal family. They basically all descended from Edward III, but they split off and they were enemies because the Yorkian kings were against the Lancastrians, and then the Henry the... Oh, I can't remember. I'll tell you about it when I go into the book. So I'm starting off with basic books, and then I'm just writing notes in here to give me the background information I need, and then later I'll go into specific books, and I'll tell you about that in a second. Here are a couple of the books that I'm using and some resources online. So I'll tell you about that as I flick through the book. So I've left a few pages at the beginning just in case I want to put anything in the beginning, but I have numbered the pages. And I made a mess of that one. I wrote 2 instead of 3, but who cares? I think if you start by making a mess in your book, you're not going to be scared to continue making, just writing in it not too neatly, and you just get on with it instead of having to really write in it neatly and then be scared of writing in it. So, first page that I started writing on, I just started writing. I didn't deliberately set it up to be a specific setup, specific format. So I just started writing about the first person that the Little Book of Tudor History, or the Little Book of the Tudors, started talking about, which is Margaret Beaufort, Henry VII's mother. So I basically just started taking notes about her, and I just used a little like a hyphen as a bullet point. Sometimes I use dots, sometimes I use hyphens. I decided to use the little lines, the little hyphens, and so just started taking notes. Easy peasy, and then it evolved from there. So that's the first thing that I started to do. Really quick bullet points about Margaret and about her connection to the royal family and why she was important. And then as I go through more and more books, I'm going to keep coming back and adding more notes. So that's why there's red ink and green ink in here, because I would keep going back and adding more notes. And I'm not going to stick to the same ink colour. I like using different ink colours. So I turned the page and the book started talking about Henry the 7th. So I started writing about him, and then I came back and I added a lot more. And as you can see from the first page, I'm doing really quick notes. And then the second page, I've now got really big paragraphs, because it's going from basic information about the people to narrative paragraphs. So you can decide in your notebook, and your notebook could be about any subject, how you want to do it. So I'm going to be talking about rapid logging and that kind of thing in the bullet journal section of this video. I'm just doing a little tour of my notebook. I kept thinking John of Gaunt was illegitimate. So yeah, it's messy. I keep scrubbing out wrong things, and when I've spelt things wrong, and when my handwriting doesn't make sense. It's not a neat book, and that's fine. And I'm going back and I'm adding more information, and I'm writing over things and stuff. It doesn't need to be neat. I like the fact that it's not neat, because my brain isn't neat. And if I make it too neat, then how am I going to come back and add more information? Henry VI, Edward of York, who became Edward IV. And then, so these are kind of like biography pages. And then I come to my first proper collection, which is battles. So I'll talk about that in a second. Timeline, which is really important. And I'll talk about that. Not timeline, sorry, a family tree, which is really important, because it's quite difficult to get your head around who was related to whom and why they've got legitimacy to become king, when they're all arguing that this person should be king, no, that person should be king. So that's a really important thing to do. And then I've got collections about specific historical events, like the Princes in the Tower. More biography about Richard, Duke of Gloucester, who became Richard III. Henry VII, Part 2, sounds like a Shakespeare play, because I've written more than one page on him. And then a timeline of the causes and events of the Wars of the Roses. And then a few pages later, because I don't know how much more I'll be writing on this timeline, I'm basically getting it from a website. I have written a list of the books that I have that are about the Wars of the Roses. And then when I've finished writing about the Wars of the Roses, I'm going to write a list of books about the Tudors. Ruby is currently thinking about climbing up the Christmas tree. So, the end of the book, I have got an index, and I have got a list of the books and the codes that I'm using to be able to denote what book I'm using on each page. So this is an important thing to do. And I'm sure any of you who are watching who are doing this like writing notes in a sort of academic way, you'll be doing this too, because it's the way that we're trained. You have to state your sources. So LBT, Little Book of Tudors, and then on my timelines pages, totallytimelines.com. So that's the layout of my book. And now I'm going to be talking about this specific book in the context of my bullet journal notes here from the Bullet Journal Method by Ryder Carroll, and also more ideas for things that you can take from the bullet journal method and apply to your subject notebooks, your subject journals. And of course, it doesn't have to be history. It can be any subject. I mean, you could do it, for example, for chemistry. You could have pages on specific chemicals, compounds and stuff. You can draw out the periodic table. You can draw out those symbols that they use to represent the chemical compounds and stuff. You can do it on English literature. You could have notes about different books and the authors and different genres in literature. You could do it on all sorts. So don't think that you can only do this for history subjects, but I'm using my notebook as the basis for talking about using the bullet journal method in the context of kind of quasi-academic notebooks. And this is for fun for me. This isn't for an essay or university or anything. So this is not 100% academic, but this can be used in academia if you so wish. So the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about with the bullet journal method and sort of subject-specific bullet journal, not really bullet journal as in the planner type bullet journal, but as in it's a journal of your notes about a specific subject and you're using the bullet journal method. So I'm just going to call it a bullet journal for now. I love this page, this key concepts page 56 to 57 of the bullet journal method book. It has pictures of the different types of pages that Ryder recommends. So he lists indexes and other types of pages, but the ones that I'm going to be looking at are index, rapid logging, collections, daily log, migration, and yeah, that's it. So the index, I'm going to flip to page 101 now. I think this is one of the most important pages for this sort of journal because, as you can see, there it is. My notebook was kind of all over the place. I was splitting up the biographies with other collections, and I don't even have the biographies in chronological order because I've written about Henry VII on a page before Henry VI, and obviously Henry VI came first. So an index is a really important way of being able to find what you have, and not just find what you have, but list what you have. So you can go, didn't I write a page about Henry VI? So you don't accidentally start a second page about him. So the index is really important, and you can do it the way that Ryder has, which I think is quite a sensible way of doing it, or you can do it the way I have, which I'm now regretting because I should have done it the way that Ryder has done it, and I'll show you the difference in a second. I just need to flick to that relevant page in my journal and stop the book from closing itself. Let's have a look. So here's my index and here's Ryder's index. Now, as you can see, I've started my index with the page numbers and followed it with the name of the page, whereas Ryder starts his with the name of the page and follows with the page numbers. And the reasons that is good, and you can see it here in food log and drawings in Ryder's book, that you can, if you've got multiple pages about the same subject, you can then list those pages. Whereas with mine, I've got Henry VII part 1 there, Henry VII part 2 there, and unless I now use a threader to link Henry VII and Henry VII part 1 and part 2, I might not realise that I've done 2 pages on Henry VII, or someone who doesn't know, who's just picked up my notebook might not realise that I've done that. So what I might do is cover this page with a piece of notebook paper and start doing the index like Ryder's version, so that I can then list multiple pages after the name of the page, because I've got a whole book on Henry the Seventh. I'm going to have a lot more to write about him, so I think I'm going to change it to Ryder's style. And Ryder also does subsections within his index, so that's quite useful, because if you had, for example, with the War of the Roses, if you had multiple pages on different battles. You might have a section for battles and then list all of the battles underneath it, so that you didn't have to then try to find all the battles down the page. You had one subsection, section of your index. So I think that is good. And then also you can have dedicated indexes, and I love this bit because Ryder has given the example of American history. So exactly what I've just said, except for not doing it as a sub-index within the index page, but doing it on a completely different page. You can have indexes on a different page about a very specific and detailed section that justifies its own section within your book because you've got a lot of pages on that subject. So that's something that I might do, because I have got a page about the battles, and I've got a page about the princes in the tower, but obviously there's going to be a lot more to write about the different battles than just what I've written here, and I won't necessarily know where I found them, so I may not do a specific index for battles. I may just write a list of battles and then eventually put page numbers to them in my list. But I've written out my timeline, which is really involved, and it's going through a lot of fine details, and it doesn't necessarily list the battles concisely. So I might just put a list of battles somewhere, and then it will later become an index because I'll put page numbers on it, and maybe I'll sort of develop it from there. Because the good thing about a bullet journal is, as you build on Ryder's system, then you can have it customized to your own needs and develop your own system from there. So that's about the index. The next thing is about rapid logging. So Ryder promotes rapid logging because it's an easy and quick way of being able to note down what you need to. So he gives the example of this page on the left has full paragraphs and a lot of words on it, but it's not easy to see at a glance what it was you're looking for because you've written so many words. Whereas here, this is the same information condensed by 60% less. Using rapid logging, instead of having to say the Acme Co, I don't know what UX is, the Acme Company presentation is due February 12th, he's written Acme Co release forms. There it is. Acme Co presentation Feb 12th. So you don't need to write so many words. So that principle can be brought into making notes from books, for essays, and that kind of thing. If you don't need to write all the words down because you've probably got that information in your head anyway, then you can just do rapid logging. So I didn't exactly do it here, but this is the best place to show you, because I didn't really write big paragraphs on this page, but instead of saying, the full-on descriptive narrative paragraphs, I've just done a lot of small summaries of the major events in Margaret Beaufort's life, so that at a glance I've got a lot of facts about her using as few words as possible, but it still gives me enough information about her life that I know enough about her to be able to understand her place in the history of the War of the Roses. So that's kind of like rapid logging. And of course, in a book like this, you've got a lot of collections, and basically the whole notebook is collections. I've got my biography pages, and then specific sections like battles, but my favourite ones are my family tree, because that's a really good reference resource, and the timeline. Got more biography pages there. The timeline is really, really important, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But depending on what your subject is, you can write so much in collections. You can have so many different collections, and they are really useful because they are reference material and an easy place to know where to write things, rather than just starting on page 1 at the top of, at the beginning of the notebook, and just writing more and more and more information, just going through, start on page 1, then page 2, then page 3, then page 4, and not actually subdividing off any subsections within your notebook. But by creating collections, you are then able to quickly find information and know exactly where to write it down. So I wouldn't recommend just writing stuff willy-nilly. Just, subdivide it, create new collections naturally. It doesn't matter if you repeat some information, but just think about how your future self in 6 months' time would wish that you had written it down in a more logical and easy to find place, and then do it like that. Of course, the bullet journal is a planner. I know it's called a journal, but most people use it as a planner. So if you look at daily logs, and here's one, you could, if you wanted to, write down everything that you researched and all the notes that you want to write in a chronological order. So for example, you could just start on, if it's January the 1st, 01/01/21, and just put down in that day's page all of the notes that you have taken from your book, from whatever you're reading, from your research. And then if you went, I remember reading that book on January the 1st, so let's go back to January the 1st, and then you can read all of your notes from that day. That's not how I would do it. As I just said, I prefer to use collections. I prefer to be able to divide up my notes into logical sections. But you could use daily logs with the bullets, etc., to be able to list all of your notes. And then, I think this is the most important part, then you use migration, which is basically moving it from one area to the other, like one place to another. So from your daily log to your specific collection. It says the monthly process of filtering out meaningless content from your notebook. That's, the way that Ryder sees it, but the way that I see it is that you can move things from one place to another. So, for example, if I were writing about Margaret, and I was to say, arranged her son Henry's marriage to Elizabeth of York. If I had a special collection on dynastic marriages or political marriages, I would then maybe draw a symbol to say, migrate this later, or maybe if I started to write something in rapid logging here, and I wanted to note that I had written more about it in another collection, I would then use, I would migrate it, which is a key concept of bullet journaling, and then I would write where it's gone. So that brings me on to threading. So threading is basically indicating where something has gone, or where something links to. So, for example, I've got Henry the 7th up there, part 1, and at the bottom I have done a threader which says it's continued on page 23. I'm not sure if it's on this page, but I could, up here, because I'm talking about the Battle of Tewkesbury, then write a threader that says go to page 15, where I talk about the Battle of Tewkesbury. So that's threading. And that's really important because you are able to quickly find the relevant section of your journal of your notebook that you needed to find. It means that you don't have to keep flicking to the index. You can see where you need to go on that very page instead of having to keep flicking to the index. For bullets, and this is obviously a key concept in bullet journaling, I have said I use my sort of hyphen line thingy bullet, but you don't have to. You can use any old bullet you want. You can customize your bullets. You can use specific bullets depending on the subject matter. So, for example, if I were writing a battle, I might do a bullet that is in the shape of a sword. If I were writing about a marriage, I might draw a bullet that looks like a wedding ring. If I were writing about a king and how his becoming king is important to the history. So there's a lot of people seizing the throne in the War of the Roses. I would maybe draw a crown. So obviously that is a useful way of being able to quickly locate information. So, for example, on this page, I would have to read some of it to be able to find some specific information. But if I wanted to find where I'd specifically written about Henry's coronation, I would look down and I would look for the bit about with the crown, with a picture of the crown, and then there's his coronation information. And signifiers are related to bullets because you can put them next to bullets, and that's the way that Rider recommends you do it. That basically they say if something is special or important. So, for example, if you are doing your bullet journal as your planner bullet journal, you might draw an exclamation mark or a star or something next to a very important event that you must get done today, a very important to do or something. Well, for example, for history or any subject in which you've got to say that something's very important, you could draw a star next to it to say this is a key event, or this is a key piece of information, or this is something that I must memorize for the exam or whatever. So you can use signifiers to be able to note important information. They're kind of like bullets, but they go alongside bullets to just denote when something is significant. And I haven't got it in this book, but you could put planning pages in here. So, for example, if you're writing an essay or a dissertation or an exam or something, and you wanted to be able to make sure that you're keeping on track, you might put planning page in here. You might draw out a month on 2 pages spread so that you can write down your tasks for each day of the month. If you've got maybe a month until your essay is due in, and you might write down a goal for word count every day, or how you want to read 1 chapter of the book every day or something. So you could put planning pages in with your subject specific bullet journal pages. So the key parts of mine, bringing all of that together, are obviously the notes that go into collections, because even though my note pages are kind of general note pages, they are collections in themselves. I'm subdividing them into biography, or then you've got the more obvious collections like battles, and then you've got the reference collections like the family tree and the timeline. And the reason why these are a key part of my bullet journal is obviously because that's the way that my bullet journal is set up, but also because when I'm going through my books, because I have books that are very basic on the history of the history of the War of the Roses and the Tudors, like this, the little book of, it denotes that it's quite basic and doesn't have much detail. And in fact, after about 13 pages, I finished the War of the Roses, and the rest of it is about Tudor history. So then I can then go on to more specific books on the specific people in the war, the battles and the main historical figures. I'm going to keep kind of not being chronological with it. I'm going to go to this basic book will summarize someone's life in about a page, and then I've got a whole book on Richard III, and so I'm going to go back in time to the beginning of his life again after I've already written about the end of his life from the most basic version of my notes. So nothing is chronological really in this book apart from the timeline. So that is one of the most important things in your bullet journal if you need to put reference sections in which be able to contextualize your other notes. So you will then be able to understand the notes that are really quite bitty and separate and have no connection between. Note 1, note 2, and note 3 could be about 3 different periods of that person's life. Then you have some key information here that can then help to keep it all straight in your brain. So the timeline and the family tree and that kind of thing are my favourite parts because they do connect everything up. They're really good references, and then they make the rest of the book makes sense. So that's a really key component to my book. And the index, because as I said, everything's a bit bitty, nothing's in order. I've got stuff about Henry the VII before, I've got it about Henry the VI, and it's not chronological. So the index really helps me to know what I've got in the book at a glance, and to be able to refer to that as well. So that's basically it. You can apply this to any subject. You can do it for fun. You can use it for university or school, and just play around with it. Let it develop on your own. You don't need to use bullet journaling, but I think that the key concepts of bullet journaling are quite useful for being able to have a notebook that is organised and has some really good ways of being able to kind of keep things able to be found quickly, referenced quickly, and then when you come back to it in 6 months' time or however long, years and years later, you'll be able to refer to things quickly and know how your brain was organised back then, and just pick up straight away where you left off.